What is going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Matticus and I am a junior physiotherapist working for the NHS in London. So today we're going to be doing a video on getting your first job in the NHS. So Band 5 interview tips if you're applying for a Band 5 role as a physiotherapist. Obviously it's very difficult at the moment to get a job because there are so many graduates coming out of uni that have just finished and very few jobs available. So just a preface before you actually go ahead and try and get the job, just head to the NHS jobs website and you want to create yourself an account. So all of that stuff, you need to prepare your personal statement or covering letter. So if you guys want to see that, then leave a comment, let me know you guys want to see that, and leave a like to show me that you've appreciated this video. So applying for the jobs is relatively straightforward. You just enter like your postcode and you put in where you live and then sort of keywords Band 5 physiotherapist or junior physiotherapist, and for me I sort of decided that I didn't want to go more than sort of half an hour commute, because commuting is honestly, in my opinion, such a waste of life. But obviously some people might need to commute further to get that job, so it might be 45 minutes to an hour one way and then like an hour plus the other, like coming back. I had to do a lot of commuting back when I was on placement and I just felt so drained. I'm pretty sure I nearly died like 3 times because I was on the motorway and basically my brain had like a micro sleep like on 3 separate occasions where I was falling asleep, and the only thing that woke me up was hitting that little white bit on the edge of the motorway that makes your car go. That was the only thing that probably saved my life. Anyway, obviously the closer you can get your job to where you actually live, the easier your life is going to be. So try and do that. Anyway, you apply for this job and you'll be shortlisted. You might be asked to, well, hopefully you'll be shortlisted. You might be asked to come for an interview. Okay, so this is where the main part of the video starts. I'm going to be talking about my experience with the interviews and giving you all the tips and tricks to actually go and bash that interview. My first interview was for a hospital in London, in Norfolk Park, and it wasn't a very good interview from my part because it was the first interview I ever did and I didn't really prepare for it. And at the same time as well, I sort of just got bad vibes. I just didn't get a good feeling.
I have a bad feeling about this.
From being on the interview with the interviewers. So almost immediately kind of decided, like in my head, I didn't want to work there. But went through with the interview, used it as a learning curve. They asked like one question about me, like what defines me, why am I different? And everything else was just clinical questions, like loads of bombarded with clinical questions that I honestly hadn't prepared for. I had prepared for loads of personal questions. There's a huge difference between applying for a physio job and applying for a place at university to study physiotherapy. Of course, if you guys are actually keen to look for a video that will talk about the interview process for physiotherapy applications for university, I made a video on that. I'll leave a link in the description below. Obviously, you can purchase my ebook as well for like further brilliant advice on actually how to ace that physiotherapy interview for university. So they ask you loads of clinical questions. I took that experience and those clinical questions that they asked and I jotted them all down on a sort of Word document and came up with these amazing answers. Well, answers that I thought were amazing, but then I sort of double checked them with my friends that were physios and just made like almost like a mini mark scheme. And that's how I prepared for my physio interview for university, and that's how I'm prepared for my Band 5 interview as well. So anyway, moving on, after that dreadful first interview, this was my second interview. Of course, my plan is when I become a Band 6 physio, I will probably make like an ebook on how to ace your Band 5 interviews, because I'm only just turned my Band 5. So as someone who's really new, I don't think I'm quite qualified yet to be able to make an interview advice video for Band 5 physios. As soon as I've been working as a Band 5 for a bit longer, I'm going to look at making an ebook that you guys can get a hold of, and it will basically give you all the tips and tricks. But I will do my best here to give you all the tips and tricks as well. I applied for the hospital that I wanted, which is the one I'm working at now, and essentially I didn't hear anything for like a week or a week and a half, or was it 2 weeks? Well, I didn't hear anything for a while. I was like, okay, they're processing my application. Then on the Sunday, it was very bizarre, on the Sunday morning I heard back, we'd like to invite you for an interview. And so Monday was a bank holiday, so I literally had like a day to get everything and just sort of rehearse and properly prepare last minute preparations, because the interview was on Tuesday morning. And so on the day, fast forward Tuesday, I went in to the interview room, and actually the main guy who was interviewing me, I actually had met before, and I kind of had been emailing him back and forth over the COVID pandemic, just saying, do you need like a band 4 tech to come in, because I was willing to apply as a band 4 just to get into the hospital, because that's where I really wanted to work. And this particular manager, I think he's a band 8, I'd actually met him before when I was doing work experience like 3 years ago, so I kind of talked about that a little bit in my personal statement as well. So I went into this room. I was on a desk in the middle, and then he had 3 senior physios sort of socially distanced apart, all facing me. It's a little bit like Dragon's Den almost, like quite intimidating. These are all very like band 7, band 8 physios, very highly senior in their respective fields. And yeah, so I sort of went in, first kind of, hello, how are you, like how did you get here, things like icebreakers. It's kind of standard really for an interview. They're trying to get you comfortable, because they're not trying to make you feel intimidated. They want you to do well in the interview because they've shortlisted you. They want to see, is this person appropriate for the job? So I went in, sat down, and the first couple questions were sort of personal questions, which I actually quite like, because it gives you a good opportunity to kind of talk a bit about yourself and like why you're here. And I think the first question was along the lines of, why do you want to work for us? And that gave me an opportunity to recall the experiences of doing work experience in like 2017 at that hospital, and just that I found it was a very positive environment, and I think I would benefit and grow in that environment, especially as a clinician. So you talk about that, and then a few more personal questions, which I thought was, as I said, I enjoyed that a bit more, because for my first interview they literally asked me one personal question and then they were like, right, moving on to clinical questions, which showed that they didn't really care about me as a person or what I was like, which is extremely important if you're in the healthcare industry. Like, you have to be a caring, compassionate, kind person, and if you've only asked one question about my personality and then you've gone straight to clinical questions, then there could be a complete psychopath sitting in front of you. You never know. Whereas when they ask you more personal questions, you know, you get to show what kind of person you are. Then the next questions were clinical scenarios from each of the seniors in their different fields. So MSK was on the left in front of me, and neuro was in the middle, and I had an ortho guy, who was the guy I actually met before, and he was on the far right. And so I had like kind of questions from them, and then I'd answer, and then move on, questions and answers. Like, what would you do in this scenario if you saw a patient that looked unwell? Or what would you do if a patient collapsed on the stairs, and etc., etc. And you just kind of talk about what you would talk about, and they just be aware that they have a scoring system. So according to the quality of your answers, you'll be given a mark. I'd say for, I don't know, the questions out of like 10, you'd be given 5, you know, hopefully above 5, and anywhere between 5 and 10. And in the end, they total you up, and then it's like, it honestly is a scoring system to make sure that it's not subjective but more objective. So they do this on their part to make sure that obviously they care about you as a person, but they also want to see who has the most clinical knowledge or who has the best aptitude with clinical reasoning, etc., etc. After the interview questions, I then had to do a practical skills, where I essentially had to do a knee assessment on one of the senior physios, like demonstrate how you would test for ACL integrity. So of course you've got the Lachman's test, and you've got the anterior draw test. On the day I actually forgot Lachman's, like I forgot what it was called, but I remembered what it was, so I demonstrated what it was, and I was like, I can't remember the name. And then one of the physios was like, it rhymes with Machman's, and I was like, oh, Lachman's, so I remembered it. So that was really helpful. When you're doing the practical assessment, just remember all your safety stuff from uni, like tile assessment, plinth height. Think about your handling, how you're holding the person. Think about kind of gain consent before, like, is it okay if I put my hands on you, yada yada. Talk through everything that you were doing, because they want to see your thought process. It doesn't even matter if you're missing parts of knowledge. Like, as a band 5, you're not expected to know everything, but they want to see your clinical reasoning. Talk through everything, even if it's slightly off. Talk about it, try and justify it. As long as you're not doing anything unsafe, that's the key. Then after the practical, I was given a sheet with a few questions to answer on arterial blood gases. So definitely revise your arterial blood gases, what the normal range was. I didn't do that, so I was like trying to pick my brain, like, oh, what was I doing in second year of physio, all that ABGs, like what's the normal range at pH, which is 7.35 to 7.45. But I had 15 minutes to complete that, and after that I handed the sheet in and then I went home. That was the interview day, that's what it consisted of. So you're probably all dying to hear about what were the results of the interview. So I didn't hear anything for like 1 to 2 weeks because, well, this was extended because people who had applied on time, some of them didn't come through in the NHS jobs website because there was like an issue, technical difficulties. So I was told by the person who interviewed me that there would be another interview day the following week, so I had to wait the following week for that interview day when they interviewed all the other people, and then another week on top of that for them to make a decision. So then when they made the decision, they said, oh, you know, you were scored very highly, there was someone who knew a little bit more than you, someone who had a little bit more knowledge. And this doesn't necessarily mean that they had better clinical reasoning or that they were a more interesting person or yada yada. That just means that they performed slightly better at the interview and they scored a little bit higher in that point scoring system. So it just shows you like the difference can be a matter of marks if you go into an interview and you're very equally weighted in terms of like qualifications and personality and whatever. It'll just come down to a few marks. Anyway, this man, geezer, person scored higher than me. So they're like, oh, you were good, but you weren't number one. So the job went to that person. So I was like, oh, damn it. Like, I basically ballsed up the interview. Because on the day I was quite nervous as well. So not making excuses or anything, but because I was nervous, my brain wasn't functioning as well as it could have been. So there were some things that I walked out of the interview thinking, I was like, damn, I could have said this, this and this, and I should have said that, and I forgot to say this, and I forgot to mention cough assist and IPP bird for one of the questions. So I was a little bit annoyed at that, but on the whole I was like pretty pleased because I thought the interview went well, but it just could have gone a little bit better, and that little bit better could have meant the difference between being first choice and second choice. Anyway, I was second choice, and the guy who interviewed me just explained that 120 people had applied and only 17 people got interviewed. So they were like, you know, you've done very, very well. So this is just a scale of what you can expect to be competing with. I'm sure I was competing with people well out of area, like people probably from like Luton applying for the job in Hillingdon where I was applying for. And it just shows you that after you come out of uni, you're not out of deep water. You've got to really just show that your head and heels above everyone else in terms of like your application. In the end, they said, we were so impressed with you, we are going to offer you a job, and this is dependent on one of our band 5s is applying for band 6 and she needs to hand her resignation in, and obviously due to COVID there's some issues, like it might be delayed, like usually we have no problem. So then I waited another week, they're like, oh, the resignation has come in, boom. So I was like, okay, no, I'm just waiting on this job now, I have got this job. So I basically got made an informal offer for the job, and waiting, another week went by. I didn't hear anything for like 1 to 2 weeks, and I was like, oh, like I've got to start looking for a job again. And then I finally heard back, yes, we've managed to get the board to approve for another physio job. I was like, yes. After that, I was like, I know I have the job, so it's time to celebrate. From there, the process was getting all the forms, signing forms, DBS checks, and then finally on the 5th of November, I started my job. And I can't believe it's been like a month and a bit now, like we're nearly in January, so by the time this video comes out it will be in January. So I'm due to rotate from my current rotation, which is older adults, and I'm due to rotate to I think MSK outpatients for my next rotation. That'll be in February at some point. But yeah, overall I just thought I'd make this video because it was very much requested. I really hope that you found this video helpful. If you did, please give this video a like, as it really does help the channel out. If you would like to see more videos like this and just follow me on my journey, then why not consider subscribing by clicking on the subscribe button down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.